J&D Distributing welcomes you to our sales symposium, Selling Your Way to the Top. This symposium was presented to specialty retailers from America's heartland as part of our 1990 dealer show and product presentation. The product presentation segment of our show was held Tuesday, July 17th at the Fireplace and Spa Center in Canton, Michigan. This newly opened 9,000 square foot showroom allowed us to showcase the products we represent in the best light possible. Operating spas, jetted baths, and fireplaces combined in a unique environment that can aid you in visualizing the product mix in your own store. The sales symposium was presented by Mr. Jeff and Dean Berry, the owners of J&D Distributing and the Fireplace and Spa Centers. We now join the symposium, Selling Your Way to the Top, in progress.
First of all, I want to apologize here for the sound. I got this coat hanging around my neck in order to get the microphone to work properly. Because of the sound not getting it working properly, we've been put back a little bit on our time schedule. Actually, dinner will probably be closer to about 6:30, so we apologize for that as well. But I'd like to welcome each and every one of you here. And if I can figure out exactly how I click this on, we'll get started. Sometimes the difference between selling and losing a sale is very small, but the difference in results is dramatic. One ends up in a big goose egg in your pocket, whereas the other one ends up putting money in the drawer. Yes, there is a major difference in our industry in selling than most others. Take a doctor, for instance. He can misdiagnose. He doesn't really know what's wrong with you. Gives you a prescription. It doesn't work. Does he still get paid? Sure he does. An attorney forgets to research a brief. Maybe he doesn't give his best closing arguments. Loses the case. Does he get paid? Sure he does. Hourly employees, workers make mistakes every day. How many of them don't get paid? They all do. But a salesman can do his very best job. He can go out there and do his very best, and if he doesn't come away with a sale, he loses. Sales is winning and losing. There's no middle ground. When was the last time that you got a commission or you got profit from almost making a sale? It just doesn't happen, does it? So then what is the difference in sales of that long out in the home run? Take a look at the video monitor and see if you can see either yourself or one of your salespeople here in this skit. And I've been told that the sound, you may have to listen closely because the sound is a little bit low.
Okay, so from what you told me and what I've explained to you about this fireplace, it sounds like this is the one that will meet all of your needs.
Man, Kevin, this is perfect. I mean, the arch is fantastic. I think it's going to go great in the living room. It has all the features that we're looking for. The firebox is perfect. You guys have a terrific price on it. How long is the sale going for?
The sale goes through the end of the week.
he's just entered a new sales dimension. A dimension that does not involve sales slips or the transference of money, but involved only his mind. A vast pool of closed sales that never return. Bills stamped paid in full and to be found on file only in the feedback zone.
Yeah, that customer, he'll be back. If anyone were coming back, he certainly will be back. What are we really saying when we say that customer will be back? Really what we're saying is that we've done a good job of telling, not a good job of selling. That we've told the customer, but we haven't sold the customer. We've given him enough information. He liked what he saw, he liked what he heard. He didn't balk at the price, but for some reason he decided not to buy. And at this point, our only chance of making a sale is for that customer to come back. But if you had to wait for all the people that told you they were going to be back, for all the people that you knew were going to come back, how long would you be waiting there at your store? If you could take all of the V-bags and have them all returned to your store in one day, how many busloads would be filled in your parking lot? See, with some companies, Greyhound wouldn't probably even have enough, would they? But what happens to all those V-bags, the ones that you knew were coming back, and they never did, they didn't return? Where did they go? That's the $64,000 question. For some salespeople, it's one of the biggest mysteries of life. Where did they go? Kind of reminds me of my sock drawer. And maybe you have a sock drawer like this too. Every once in a while, I'll go to my sock drawer and I'll take out one single sock all by itself. Just a black one. And I search through it, and I can't find the mate. A couple of weeks later, I find a blue sock all by itself. I look, I can't find the mate to it. So what happened to the other sock? See, no one really seems to know. But probably both those socks and those V-bags are floating around out of some time warp in outer space. And you can believe that if those V-bags ever do return someday, they'll all be carrying an armload of socks with them. Now, really, what can happen to a V-bag that doesn't return? Really, there's only three things that can happen. Number one, either they buy from a competitor. Number two, they still haven't bought it all. Or number three, they have died and they'll never buy again. Unless, of course, you believe in reincarnation. Now, when you consider those factors, what is the chance of getting a V-bag back? Well, if the customer ever does buy, you've now divided up your opportunity to sell him with all your competitors, whether they be 2, 3, or 4. But what are the customers that never do buy? That's a big category. It's very underestimated. Many people go, they look at a product, they say, boy, I really like that, they're excited about it, they leave, and they never buy from you or a competitor. Now, why would a customer do that? Why would they shop? And it's not just to play a trick on you. It has to do a lot to do with the kinds of products that we sell. We sell products he was yelling out, "Red Hots! Get your Red Hots! Get them while they're hot!" He kept saying, "Get them while they're hot." And I thought, you're this hot dog vendor, you're the basic principle of sales. You have to get them while they're hot. He knew that nobody would want to buy a cold hot dog. The same thing is true with customers. You have to get them while they're hot. And when are they the hottest? Isn't it when they're right there in your store? When you hold center stage? When you can build up that desire to a feverish pitch? When their needs and priorities are pushed to the side? Isn't that when they're hot? Now, if you allow that customer to walk out the door, it's kind of the same as taking a hot dog out of the oven. It begins to cool off almost immediately. The same is true of customer as it is a hot dog. When they become cold, either one can be sold. Yeah, but people in my town, they're different. Everybody in my town is different. See, they won't buy the first time in. They're just different. Now, if you truly believe that statement, then it will be very difficult for you to sell customers the first time in. If you truly believe that people are different in your town, it's probably because you haven't been able to sell them up to this point on the first time in. And that would mean that the majority of your sales are probably VBACs. Now, if the majority of your sales are VBACs, then either one of two things is true of your business. Either A, you are just getting by, or B, you're only achieving 1/3 to 1/2 of your potential. Well, many people think that people in their town are different. Reality shows us that for the most part, people are the same here in this country. Take salespeople, for instance, just to show you the similarity of people. You can go all over the country, every city, town, in the entire United States, and you're going to find salespeople who will say, people in my town, they're different. People in my town are different. They won't buy the first time in. That shows you the similarity of people. See, we're all affected by the same media and advertising that really shapes the ways that we think and the way that we act. The similarity of people is remarkably predictable. It's a fact that most people go to bed, they wait to go to bed until after the evening news. If a new product comes out on the market, McDonald's or an automobile or a new movie, they can test market in one part of the country, couple, and find out pretty much it's going to be popular all over. A pollster can sample the opinions of 500 people, and he can know within just a few percentage points the opinions of millions. But another similarity of people all over the country is that salespeople have a hard time selling them the first time in. See, people aren't different in your town. It's the same. People have a hard time, salespeople have a hard time selling customers the first time in. There's really no difference in your town than there is in any other town. But it's not that a customer can't be sold the first time in. It's just that a customer will not choose to buy the first time in. That's the similarity. If you leave it up to Mr. Jones, Mr. Jones will not choose to decide to buy. You want to go home and think about it before he makes a buying decision. Well, how are you personally, and in your store, your salespeople, how are they doing in that regard, selling the first time in? Of your major ticket items, how many are sold the first time in? Is it 1 out of 10? 2 out of 10? Do you really know? See, unless you really know how you're doing, you're not going to ever be able to make any improvement in that regard. Now, in our retail stores, we were working on trying to sell customers the first time in over the last couple of years. We felt we were doing a fairly good job making improvement, but we didn't know how we were doing. So we developed our own upsheet, which is used in many industries, and if you notice in your outline, there's a copy of it there. And from our experience of using it, we would recommend that you might use something similar, perhaps develop something yourself. It's called an upsheet because our salespeople are paid on a commission basis. They each take a turn handling the customer as they come through the door. They take their up. Now, a person comes through the door, the salesman puts his name down, the time of day. After he's done talking to his customer, he comes back and he puts, for what? Why were they there? Where was the lead source? What advertising was effective? Did ITO? That means that they turned the sale over to a more experienced salesperson who would attempt to close. Who was the TO person? What city were they from? Total time spent with the customer, and then the results. By being analyzing these things, you can learn a lot. Where your advertising is effective, how your individual salespeople are doing, much as it is your salespeople. Now consider this, what would it mean to you if you could close and sell twice as many customers? What would that mean to you? Now, if you're a company or companies that are just getting by, normally use about 95% of their profit dollars to cover overhead and expenses. If they make $100,000 of gross profit, that would mean that $95,000 goes to pay the bills. At the end of the year, all they got left is $5,000 to put into their pocket. Now, if you could close twice as many customers, you would have a couple hundred, $200,000 in the same situation. Your expenses wouldn't go up much more, maybe another $5,000 to process the sales. But now you've got $100,000 at the end of the year to put into your pocket. That's an increase of 20% in the bottom line. That's why selling is really the fastest and most cost-effective way to increase your profit. And selling the customer the first time in is crucial to your bottom line. Now, the reason that we're focusing in on this point is that for so long, salespeople have had ingrained into their thinking that customers will not buy the first time in. Because of that, rather than developing, acquiring, and honing their sales skills, many have began to gradually develop telling skills. Rather than becoming professional salesmen, they become professional tellsmen. Now, what's a professional tellsman? Professional tellsman is someone who can tell the customer everything he wants to know. I mean, he knows it all. He knows how many BTUs, how many amps. He knows everything about the installation. He knows every piece and part on every product. He's professional. He knows it all. He knows his customer, his competition's product as well. He relies upon his product presentation in order to ultimately win out, to eventually bring that customer back in, and the customer say, write me up, I want it. Now, if the customer leaves and actually ever does buy, the sale comes down to two things. Because that customer will go, if you have competitors who also have talismen working for them, he will go and he'll shop those talismen, he'll hear what they have to say, and he gets a piece of literature from each one, doesn't he? Then he goes home and he sits down with the wife, and they look at the literature, they remember what the talisman had to say, and then they make a decision. They go back to that location to buy. That's the people that do end up buying. So the final analysis, the talisman, is just another source of information to the customer, just like the brochure is. Sure, maybe the best talisman will win out sometimes. Some people have better feedback records than others. But in the final analysis, who sold the customer? See, really nobody did. The customer sold himself. Now, a salesman, he has a different mindset. Now, sure, he knows his product too. He knows it inside and out, and that's important. But when that customer comes through the door, he views them differently. He firmly believes that his only opportunity to sell that customer is going to be right now. And he's convinced that if that customer walks out the door, he will never see him again. He doesn't believe in feedback. As a matter of fact, the word's not even in his vocabulary. And because of that, because of having that frame of mind, the professional salesman works constantly at acquiring, honing, perfecting their sales skills. And he uses them relentlessly on every prospect that walks through that door. He knows that it's not what you know that counts. It's how you use what you know that counts. So he's continually sharpening himself in that regard. And when he loses and the customer leaves, instead of consoling himself and he'll probably be back, the professional salesman thinks, well, what could he do? What about the next time? What will he do then? How can he turn that customer left into a sale when the situation comes up again? Now consider your own sales staff. And be honest. Are they filled with salesmen or are they filled with talismen? The difference could be literally costing you tens of thousands and in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars. We hope at this point that we have your minds thinking along the lines of selling the customer the first time in. Because for the rest of the seminar, we're going to focus on some specific ways that you can actually do that. We're going to be talking about the recipe of a sale. We're going to also talk about the sales presentation and what it means to touch all the bases. Then we're going to talk about closing seconds, pour yourselves a glass of water, get a drink, and then we'll get started since we're a little short on time. Okay, fire and a sale. Fire and a sale. What do the two have in common? Each require 3 ingredients in order to be made. Now, with fire, most of you being in the fireplace business, you know that. It takes fuel, oxygen, and heat. And when you bring the 3 of those together, what do you get? Fire. That's the principle of a match. And the match, of course, is your fuel. It's surrounded by oxygen. And when you strike it across the pad, that creates the friction, heat. The 3 come together at one time, what do you get? You get fire. The same principle is true with selling, with a sale. They're basically 3 ingredients that when they're brought together at one time, it will almost always result in a sale. Now, what are those 3 ingredients? They are desire, urgency, and effective closing. When those 3 come together at one time, it will almost always produce a sale. And anytime a sale is lost, you can almost always trace it to a lack of at least one of those 3 ingredients: desire, urgency, and effective closing. Now, to illustrate how the combination of those 3 things, when they come together, produce a sale, let's consider an auction. How many of you have ever been to an auction? Raise your hands. Just about everybody has. They're fun, aren't they? I like going to auctions. But why do things sell at an auction? Why do items sell there? Everything sells at an auction. When it goes up, it gets sold. Why do they sell? If you were to take all the items that were sold in an auction, and at the end of the auction, go and mark them at the price they were sold at. Put a price tag on them. The next day, go put them in a retail store. March that same audience into the store. How many of those people would buy the same items for the same prices that they paid at the auction? Probably very few, wouldn't they? Well, why did they sell at the auction? Why did they sell there?
Emergency.
There we go. There's urgency. A good deal. There's all kinds of reasons why it's sold at the auction. People buy at the auction because the elements are together. You have desire, urgency, and effective closing. You have desire because the bidder has at least some desire in order to begin bidding, doesn't he? He looks at a product and says, well, yeah, I kind of like that. I'll maybe go $50 on that. He has some desire. Urgency is in massive doses at an auction. If that bidder does not make a decision right now, he's going to lose out on a good deal. You have effective closing. Now, effective closing means any close that's effective. A close, of course, is asking for the sale. Isn't that what the auctioneer does? He'll give me a $50 bill, give me a $50 bill, give me a $50 bill. He's asking for the sale. Without the auctioneer, a sale wouldn't take place. And when those 3 things come together, you get a sale. Now, when that prospect or that bidder jumps into the selling process, and he goes, oh, he's made a buying decision. He had the desire, there was urgency, there was a close, somebody asked for the deal, he made a buying decision. Now, somebody else gets in over here to the bidding. Now comes back to this person again, and the closer puts a little more pressure on him. He looks at the guy and he says, hey, well, give me $70 bill. And how many times does he ask? Does he just ask once? Even in an auction, he goes, give me a $70 bill, give me a $70 bill, $70 bill, $70 bill. And that person's there like this, and after about 8 or 9 times, finally goes, okay. Isn't it? That's an effective closing. When those 3 come together, it produces sales. But you might say, well, we're in the retail business. We can't hold auctions. How's that going to work for us? Well, the formula works. Yes, it does. It works in retail businesses all over the country. In this city, your city, and others are doing it. Some people in this room are doing it with that formula. Desire, urgency, and closing. It will work whether you're selling in your store or anywhere else where you're selling. Now, how many of you have done home shows? Builder shows, county fairs? Just about everybody here. Where is it easier to sell a customer? Is it easier to sell a customer that kind of walks by your booth at a home show, or is it someone that walks in your front door of the store? obviously somebody that comes to your store. Why? Well, it's because at least one of those three ingredients is generally there. They come to your store with a purpose. They already desired that product. They come to look at patio furniture or a fireplace or a spa. You ever had just somebody that's casually riding by that comes in? It's hard to sell, isn't it? Somebody comes there has a purpose. They already have a desire. Sometimes they even supply a second ingredient, urgency, self-imposed. They need it. I got to have it next week, and we have company coming over. Or I'm off work, and that's the only time I can install it. Or it's hot right now, we need the air conditioners. They have self-imposed urgency. So you always have a couple of those going for you. All you have to do is close them. At a show, people are coming by, and they don't really have a focused reason. They don't have the desire for your product. There's just one of 100 different items there. They also want to see the other things. So for you to supply desire, urgency, and closing, you have to do it all quickly in order to produce a sale at a show. And it very rarely happens. It very rarely happens. That's why they call them shows, not sales. Now we've had the same experience. We worked shows for the last 10 years. We've been to shows, and very rarely do we sell anything at a show. Well, that was our experience. We go there and show the product, and we come away from a show selling $10,000 worth of product. We'd be ecstatic. Quite an accomplishment. But then we began to apply this formula of desire, urgency, and effective closing. We tried out in shows. The results were staggering. Just to give you some statistics, this spring, 4 recent shows that we did a super sale at the Silverdome, 4-day show. Everything there was primarily socks and tennis shoes and things like that. We had large ticket items. We sold over $300,000 in 4 days. Oakland County Home Show, 4 days. First time they ever had a show, low attendance. 4 days, over $200,000 in sales. Homerama, which just ended, that is a show of shows of all this. People just go there to look. $280,000 at Homerama. Cobo Builder Show, 10 days this spring. 10 days, $1,300,000. Now it shows that formally we'd be happy to do $10,000. Here we were doing millions of dollars worth of sales at those shows. Now those kind of results can be produced at a show which is historically very difficult to sell at. Imagine the kind of results that can be produced in your own showroom. They are in ours. It's much easier to take that same formula and work it in a showroom. But how can those three ingredients be generated? And how can they be brought together at one time to produce a sale? Well, let's take a look at each one individually. First, let's take a look at desire. It can reasonably be said that a prospect today will not buy something he doesn't want. You can't sell a prospect something that he doesn't want. It's very difficult. It's almost impossible. He has to want and desire your product before you can have a chance to sell him. A key factor in building desire is by appealing to a customer's sense of sight. A customer can literally be turned on or turned off to your product by what he sees. That's why when we do a show, we will spend a considerable amount of time and money to make sure that the displays are showstoppers. Because when a person sees something that appeals to their eyes, it begins the juices of desire flowing. It's the presentation. Kind of like when you go to a fine restaurant. You know, the food is much higher in price. It's the same food, but why? When they bring it out, it looks so good, doesn't it? It's garnished just right. That little tomato is sliced into different designs. Now they could, if they brought it out and just pumped it in round little balls and put it on the plate, it would taste the same. But when it looks so good, it starts with the juices of desire flowing. And that's what your products will do as well, if you paint the right picture. Now, what kind of picture are you painting to your customers when they come into your showroom? We all know a picture paints 1,000 words, but you could be painting either 1,000 good words or 1,000 bad words by what your customer sees. If you're painting 1,000 bad words to make your sales and 1,000 good words just to get you back up to level par. When your prospect walks through the door and looks at your products, does he see beautiful into the showroom and noticed that Cadillac front end jacked up with a tire laying on. They climbed into the seat, shut the door, and there's an empty Coke bottle there and a spare tire laying in the back seat. Of course not. The Cadillac dealer is very protective of his image and his reputation. It's almost humorous to even consider such a possibility. But what's not humorous is that many retailers do not look at their reputation and their image in the same way. You go into their showroom and there is a stove jacked up with a blower taken off. Customer needed. Empty pop bottle laying over on the sign. Dust in the spots. So when a customer walks in through your door, he begins to immediately form an overall opinion on your business. And whether you are the owner, the general manager, or a salesperson, always remember it's your responsibility too to protect the image of your store. Next time you go by, you see some trash, pick it up. So need to be dusted, dusted. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. It could literally cost you hundreds of dollars in sales and lost commissions. But let's say that you are painting a good picture. Your displays look good. It's now up to the salesperson to raise that level of interest, the level of interest and desire that has whetted the appetite of that customer. It's up to your salesperson to raise that level of interest up to a very high level. And then showing how your product can satisfy that desire. At a show, Dean and I have an opportunity to observe a number of different salespeople. We'll maybe have 10 or 12 salespeople working the floor at some of these shows. Some are experienced, some are not. We can literally look and see which salesperson is going to wind up with a sale. When you see a salesperson, he's making good eye contact with the customer, he's talking to both the husband and wife, he's using their first name, he's in control, he has them following him, he gets them to touch the product, he gets them inside of the spa seats, he gets them to sit in the patio furniture, open the doors on the spas. He's not just selling features, he's selling the benefits. He doesn't just show them how it works, he tells them what it will do for them. He paints a picture, he puts them in the picture. He sells the dream. You can see it written all over the customer's face. Dean and I will say, well, there's going to be a sale right there. Now, on the other hand, sometimes we'll have an inexperienced salesman that's lethargically moving around, no expression on his face, talking about the product. And the customers look the same way. There's not a chance in the world that will ever wind up being a sale. We'll have to sometimes bring the salesman aside and explain to him what he really needs to do in order to generate that desire, and then send him back out there onto the sales floor. So your salesman's job is to create that desire, drive it up to a high level, and then build value. Now, let's say your salesman does that, and he supplies the first ingredient, desire. Now, how does urgency come into it? Well, before we talk about urgency, it's important that we consider a very strong motivating force behind people's buying decisions. Now, we already talked about people being very similar. We're all driven by advertising and media to search for high quality, the best value, at the absolute lowest price. We live in a day of negotiation. Everyone wants a deal. Everyone wants to negotiate a better deal. Now, to just illustrate that point, how many of you would ever expect to walk into a car dealership and pay the retail price, the sticker price? Is there anyone here that would walk in and expect to do that? How about major appliances? Furniture for your home. Would you expect to walk in and pay the suggested retail price? No. See, advertising in the media goes, we got to get a better deal. There's deals out there all the time. Nobody would do that. But see, you know what happens? Sometimes some business people will make the mistake of pricing the products in their showroom at or about the level that they're willing to take for the product. Why is that a mistake? Well, you better believe that when Mr. Jones comes into your showroom, he is going to be looking for a deal. And unless you satisfy his buying system, unless you satisfy and allow him to use his negotiating skills, you will lose sales. Understanding how strong that this motivating force is to the customer to get a deal. That's a strong motivator. It's vital when we talk about urgency. Because urgency can be supplied in a couple of different ways. It can be supplied by a better deal. Or it can be supplied by short supply. You can create urgency with short supply. But in our businesses, we can't do that. There's not short supply. What urgency is it to the customer when you say, Mr. Jones, this fireplace here, this is my last fireplace, and here's the suggested retail price, but it's my last one. That's not urgent. He said, well, I'll go down to the other place. They got fireplaces. So we have too many products here. Now, if you're in Eastern Bloc countries, it's different. They create urgency because they don't have anything. They get snapped off the shelf because there's nothing to buy. Even here in the United States recently, the Mazda Miata. I know Maury Bucklow has got one of those. And people paid well over sticker price. I'm sure Maury probably did too for his. And why? There was desire for the product, but it was in short supply. That was the urgency. We can't do that with our products. Today, urgency, and for all of you, is almost always going to be supplied by giving a better deal. By a better deal. Now, urgency is the period of time that would allow for a prospect to make a buying decision in order to preserve the deal. That's the amount of time we allow for them to make a buying decision in order to preserve a deal. Now, for instance, if you're running a 3-day sale, what are you really saying? You're saying, Mr. Jones, we will give you a better deal if you make a buying decision within 3 days. See, urgency is almost always created today by the deal with the deadline. The shorter the deadline, the more urgent it becomes. For instance, what's more urgent to you? Something you have to do today, or something you have to do a month from now? Obviously, something you have to do today is more urgent. What's got to be done a month from now doesn't become urgent until a month from now, does it? What's the same with Mr. Jones? Now, when he comes into your showroom, let's say it's July 15th, and he walks in, and if he likes the product, you built his desire up, you got that ingredient, and he says, well, how long does your sale last? And you say, well, the sale goes until the end of the month. Now, what's Mr. Jones going to say? He's going to think, oh, I don't have to make a decision. I got till the end of the month. So he takes a brochure, he's going to leave, and he's going to start cooling off almost immediately. Now, let's say the same Mr. Jones happened to walk into your showroom, and it was the last day of the month, 10 minutes to closing time. You built up his desire. He said, wow, I really like it. Hey, how long does your sale go? And you say, Mr. Jones, you happen to come in on just the right time. We've been running a month-long sale. Today's the last day, and it's 10 minutes to closing time, and you can still get this phenomenal deal. Now, which situation do you have the best chance of selling Mr. Jones? Obviously the last one, because it's more urgent. But you know what some salespeople do in that situation? They feel the heat that Mr. Jones feels. As Mr. Jones says, you mean I have to decide right now? And the salesman stands there and says, I'll tell you what, Mr. Jones, since you came in on the last day of our sale, since you really didn't have time to go home and think about it, we'll let you go home, and if you get back to us by, let's say, Wednesday, and if you want it then, we'll go ahead and give you the same deal. What's the salesman just done? He's taken away the urgency. But what if an auctioneer were to do that? You give me a $70 bill, $70 bill, $70. Oh, hey, hold it. That's all right. Go home. You go home, you think about it. Now I'll give you a couple of days. And then you come back and tell me you'll give us a $70 bill. We'll still give you the same deal. What would happen? Would he sell anything? Very few things will be sold. The reason that things sell at an auction is that the urgency is at the highest level it can be. That customer doesn't have a week. He doesn't have a day. He doesn't have an hour. He doesn't even have a minute to make a decision. He has to decide right now in order to preserve that good deal. And remember, Mr. Jones does not want to lose out on a good deal. Now you might say, that's just too urgent for me. That's just too much pressure to put on the customer. It's just too urgent. But really, is it too much pressure on the customer? Or is it too much pressure on the salesperson? There's no more pressure-filled environment than being at an auction. You better believe that when that auctioneer is staring you in the eye and is saying, will you give me $70, $70, $70, $70, 300 people are looking right at you, there is a lot of pressure on you, isn't there? And nobody likes that pressure at the time. Nobody likes it. But as soon as that customer says, okay, and he says, sold, pressure's auctioneer makes you make a decision. How many people say, that auctioneer, I'm so mad at him. He didn't let me go home and think about it for a week. See, people don't say that. To your customers, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if you do it right, they will love you for helping them make a good decision. Anytime you ask a customer to make a decision, there's going to be a certain amount of pressure involved. Customers have a hard time making decisions. They don't like to. They can't stand it. They put it off. They procrastinate. That is why if you leave it up to Mr. Jones, he will not choose to decide to buy the first time in. See, selling is the art of persuading the prospect to make a buying decision. That's real selling, not telling. And if you do it right, I guarantee Mr. Jones and Mrs. Jones will love you for helping them to make the right decision. We see it all the time. We show within 20 minutes from the time somebody walks into the booth, they're being written up, they're sitting there, and somebody comes by, they know, and they say, hey, we just bought a spa. They're excited. But as a salesperson, you personally have a hard time with dealing with the pressure that's involved with helping a customer make a decision. Then there's one thing you can be guaranteed of. You will be living off feedbacks for the rest of your selling career. Now, with regard to urgency, how can we make a deal more urgent for the customer? You've all experienced this. You're running a 3-day sale. The customer comes in. You have some urgency. It's a 3-day sale. Customer comes in and he says, yeah, I really like it. How long does your sale last? You say, well, it's 3 days. What does he do? He's got 3 days. He doesn't have to make a decision. So he says, okay, I'll go home and think about it. We had the same thing happen. We would go to these home shows, and we would go, sure, with our retail price, suggested retail. And we would come in with a home show special. Customer would say, well, how long is the special last? Won't tell the show. So we thought that was urgent. But you know what the customer would say? Well, think about it. So they did. Even at the very last day of the show, same thing would happen. How long does it go? Well, the show is ending today. Oh, what time is it open till? How many hours is it open till? It's only open another hour. Okay, well, that's what I'm thinking about. How can you make a deal more urgent for the customer? You do it by shortening the deadline. But how can you do that and still make it tasteful for the customer? You might say, I can't run 10-minute sales all the time. I can't run every hour a 10-minute sale on an hour. How can you make a deal more urgent and still make it tasteful for the customer? That's what we pondered when we were doing these shows. So we ended up changing our strategy a little bit. We go to the home show, sure, we have our suggested retail price, and we have our home show special. But rather than putting our home show special right here where we normally would, at the price that we were willing to take, we would put our home show special price here. Give ourselves a little room to negotiate. Now, the same customer is talking to the same salesman. The salesman says, or the customer says, wow, I really like it, this is great. How long does the sale last? Well, it goes to the end of the show. And the salesman would say, you know, Mr. Jones, I'm sure that you can appreciate from everything we talked about here that if you waited until after the sale and were to pay the retail price, you would still be getting an excellent value for your money. See, that's important, to build in value to your product. If you can say that to a customer and they agree, that tells you you've done a good selling job of building value. Oh yeah, I can see that. But if you're like me, you like to save as much as you can. I'm sure you'd much rather get it for the show price. Oh yeah, I'm going to go home and we'll think about it, and we'll be back. So Mr. Jones, let me ask you this. If you could even save a little bit more money, if you could get a much better deal, would you be interested in it? If you're like me, I know you would, Mr. Jones. Oh yeah, sure I would. Well, the reason I bring that up is our manager has indicated that if anybody was interested in buying a fireplace or spa or patio set today, that he was authorized to give a better price. Now, I'm not sure what he could do, but if you'd like, I could go check to see what kind of price we could get. I really do. Mr. Jones doesn't want to miss out on a good deal. Sure, he says, go check. The salesman goes over, gets the manager, tells him what the situation is. The manager comes up. So, Mr. Jones, my salesman here has explained that you were interested in this spa. And as I told all the salespeople, if anyone was interested today, I could even do better than the price that we have on it right now. Well, let me ask you a question. If we could do something really special for you, a real special deal on the price, would you be in a to hold the deal until delivery arrangements can be made. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is this. If I gave you a price, a special price, and you liked the price, only if you liked the price, would you just be in a position? You have like a MasterCard or Visa or checkbook. Almost all the time, they'll, well, yeah, oh, okay, if we like the price, sure, we'd be in a position to. Well, see, now you've opened them up to the possibility of making a decision, of buying. Now, if you give them a price, what would they do? They'd say, well, okay, we'll walk around and think about it. So the manager would say, well, now, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, there's just one thing that I ask of you. Sometimes I'll come out and I'll give people a special price. And they'll say, wow, we really like the price. They'll say, let's walk around and think about it. We'll be back. But Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I'm sure you can appreciate it. If I had to wait here for everybody that told me they were going to come back, I'd be here all, I had to set up at 10, I'd be here all night long. And they'd say, oh yeah, I know, I can appreciate that. So all I ask of you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, is that if I give you a special price, and it's one that you like, all I ask of you, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, is that you just let me know one way or another, and I can handle rejection. Just let me know one way or another if you'd like to go ahead with it. And does that sound fair? Now, all the time, they'll say, well, yeah, sure, I understand. Yeah, that sounds fair. But what does the customer just agree to? They've agreed that if you give them a price and they like it, they're in a position to give you your deposit that you need. They also have agreed that if you give them a price, they're not going to walk around and think about it. They're going to have to decide. They'll have to make a decision. They've already told you that they won't walk around. They'll either let you know yes or no. They put themselves into an auction environment where they don't have an hour. They're going to have to let you know right now. They asked for it. They asked you to do that. So you say, okay, very good. Here's what we'll do. And you'll have a notepad. So here's the retail price. Here's the home show special. And Mr. and Mrs. Jones, if you would give us a $500 deposit, here's what we'll do. You know, they look at it. They don't look at you, they always look at it. And they usually don't say anything. Sometimes I'll say, wow, we'll take it. Most times they just look at it. Remember, Mr. and Mrs. Jones don't like making decisions, but they don't want to miss out on a good deal either. So they look at it, but they realize they can't say we're going to go walk around and think about it. They already told you they wouldn't. So finally, Mr. Jones will kind of look over to Mrs. Jones and say, well, what do you think, honey? Well, Mrs. Jones doesn't like making decisions either. But she doesn't want to miss out on a good deal, so she says, well, boy, I don't know. I like the spa, and it seemed like a good price to me. Sometimes he'll say, well, okay. Other times he'll just look back at it. You can see it. Finally, the salesperson might say, Mr. Jones, is there something wrong with the price? And almost always they'll say, oh, no, the price is great. And do we have a deal? Okay, yeah, we got a deal. See, those three things came together. Now, we're not going to really go into the closing part of it because there's a lot of things that can come up. We're going to save that for Dean. So we're talking about closing and overcoming all of the objections and things that they can say. All I want to illustrate there is how we made a deal more urgent. We put the customer in a situation where they had to decide right then. They had desire, they had urgency, they had effective closing, and it results in sales. So that's the recipe of the sale. We're going to be talking next about touching all the bases in our sales presentation, what that means. But what I think we'll do here is give you a chance to get a drink of water, and let's see, we've got, and I'll give you 5 minutes if you have to use the restroom before we get started. Our sales presentations, and what it means to be touching all the bases. A good sales presentation should consist of 4 basic steps. Your greeting, qualifying the customer, product presentation, and then closing. Those are the 4 steps to a good sales presentation. It can kind of be compared to the 4 bases on a baseball diamond. Now, a baseball player can get a hit, and he can run to first base. He can go to second. He can go to third. But he doesn't score, he doesn't put any runs on the board until he comes home. But he can't come home unless he's touched all the bases. Well, the same thing thing is true with selling. You don't score until you get home, until you make the deal, until you close the sale. But you can't sell the customer, you can't make the deal until you touch all the bases. Greeting, qualifying, product presentation, and then closing. You have to touch them all. A professional salesperson uses a organized sales presentation that is geared to effectively get him around those bases in an efficient manner. When a prospect comes through that door, he has in his mind that he's going to get him into a closing environment. But he works on the grading and qualifying the product presentation before he does that. You should be able to stop a professional salesperson anywhere at all in his sales presentation. Say, stop! Hold it right there. Where are you? And you can say, hey, right now I'm between first and second, or I'm between second and third, or I'm just rounding third and I'm heading for home. Now, an unorganized salesperson doesn't have an organized sales approach. They tend to ramble on. You've talked to salespeople like that before. They ramble. It's kind of like they go from first base to third, back to second, over here, across the net. They don't even know where they are. If you were to stop and say, hey, stop right there. Where are you with your sales presentation? They don't know. Neither does their customer, do they? So it's important to have an organized presentation and then make consistent progress around the bases. Remember the bases: greeting, qualifying, product presentation, and then closing. Now let's take a look at those 4 steps individually. First of all, the greeting. Now the greeting is probably the easiest, but one of the most important steps in the sales presentation. It's also one that many salespeople take for granted. They continuously use the same greeting over and over in a monotonish way. They have forgotten how quickly a prospect forms an opinion about them, how quickly they make an impression on the prospect. So you can either make a good impression or a bad impression. If you make a bad impression right off the bat, you will have a hard time closing the deal. Because people like to buy from people they like. If you make a bad impression with your customer, you will probably never make it to first base. But what is an effective greeting? What kind of greeting is effective? There's no magical answer to that. Greeting is largely personality, charm, charisma. There's as many effective greetings as there are people. So there are a few basic things that you'll want to remember when it comes to your greeting. Things to do and things not to do. Before we talk about those, though, it's important to get in mind how the customer feels when he's coming in your front door. Because people have certain feelings that are predominant among customers when they come into your store. So let's take a look at the video monitor and see how customers, one of the common feelings of customers when they come into your store, this you might call a customer's worst nightmare.
Boy, they're going to be asking me all kinds of questions, and I don't know nothing about these fireplaces. Maybe there's nobody in there. I know, I'll just tell them. I'll just tell them that I'm just looking. Should I do it? Oh, here it goes. I'm safe. There's no salesman here. All right.
Here's my card! Can I help you?
Isn't that how customers feel sometimes when they come to the store? They're afraid. They're not afraid of your products. They're afraid of you. How many times have you had a customer walk in and you start to approach him and they say, no, that's all right. We're just looking. Stay away. See, many people, they're afraid. They have a defensive shield up when they walk in through that door. It's like they have a sword, a big shield. So it probably would be wise for you to pounce on the customer as soon as he comes in the door. Allow him to step in the door. shield down, let him walk around and he'll kind of look around, see what he's interested in, and as he finally gets over to a product that he likes and they stop there and they look at it, they know you're going to be coming up anytime, they're just waiting. But when they finally do that, that would be the time to really approach them. See, their defenses are down a little bit then. You get off to a better start. And when you approach him at this point, it's always important. The one thing to always remember, this is the always do rule. Always wear a warm, friendly smile. That's the international sign of friendliness. It's been said that a warm smile can melt even the biggest of icebergs. But you know, some salespeople, they forget that. They approach the customer with a stone face that resembles a serial killer. And they use the absolute worst greeting possible. Take a look at the video.
Oh, there's the patio furniture.
Hi, can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I take your order? Can I take your order? Can I help you?
Well, I guess I was just kind of looking at wood stoves.
Well, you see anything that you like?
Well, I haven't really looked yet.
Well, I tell you what, just look around. We got about 10 of them on display, and you see something that you like, my name's Jim. Just ask for me. Oh, by the way, if you'd like a cherry pie or an apple pie to go along with that wood stove, you can get that at the time that you order it.
Can I help you has got to be one of the worst ingredients that you could possibly use. It is absolutely reserved for order takers and clerks. Now, people associate words and phrases with other people. If you use a phrase like that, it's just common to roll it off. Can I help you? You can easily be associated with the last fast food clerk or order taker that they were common with. All of the bad things that they remembered about salespeople can instantly come right back into their mind. Sure, that salesperson can help them. I mean, that's why he's there. Try to use a greeting that is more original, one that's friendly, one that's designed to reduce the defensive shield that is built up there in the customer. I mean, it could be a number of things. It could be just as simple as, good afternoon, welcome to Fun Places Response Center. Is the afternoon heat starting to subside? So you might say something on another comment, kind of break the ice where they can comment about the afternoon. Good afternoon, welcome to Fun Places Response Center. I know it's still slippery from all that snow we got out there earlier. That could be one way you do it. And especially if the customer meets your eye as you're approaching them, you can have more of a formal introduction. Once that's done, you can then say, so what brings you in the store today? They'll tell you. You can introduce yourself, give your names, and continue to use those names throughout your selling presentation. Now, sometimes you get the customer, he walks in, and when you start to approach, he doesn't look at you, does he? You're afraid. They're looking at the product. They know you're coming. Rather than going into a real formal introduction, sometimes it's been suggested by a number of speakers, is to, when you approach, make a comment on the product. Ask an opening active question. You might say, I see you looking at the 4 jets on that spa. Would you like to see a model that has 6 jets? I noticed that you were looking at the grill work on the front of that fireplace. Would you like to see a similar model with a flush front? What that does is it causes a thinking response. It gets them involved in the sale, breaks the ice, then you can introduce yourself and get on with your selling presentation. But regardless of what greeting you use, give it some thought. Don't take it for granted. Make it something that's original, something that's friendly, something that will tell them about you. If you do that, if you have an effective greeting, then you're off to first base. You're on first. Effective greeting is now time to go to second. Don't stand there for hours on first base. Go to second. You need to find out whether or not you have a now buyer, a later buyer, or a never buyer. All three of those you're going to be handling a little bit differently, partially. But there are other things that you find out during qualification that are important. A lot of things. Some of these might be, does the prospect have a set amount that he is already thinking of spending that kind of product? Are there any financial limitations that might make it unwise for you to go and show him the most expensive product and stimulate his desire in that direction? There are a number of things you could find out during qualifying. But of those, the most important one, once you determine whether you have a now buyer, the most important thing you need to find out is his key reason for buying. Why does he want your product? That's his key reason. That is his motivating force. That is what will motivate him to purchase. If you find out the key reason, that customer is literally handing you the keys to his selling lock. All you have to do is unlock it. So you can use his key reason, that motivating force, throughout your product presentation in order to stimulate desire and build up enthusiasm for the product. But now, how do you accomplish qualifying? How do you do it? By asking questions, through small talk, getting to know the customer. One good way of doing that, an easy way, is getting the customer to talk about themselves. People generally feel comfortable doing that. They don't know much about your products, but they can tell you about them. You can talk about themselves in 5 minutes. You can literally find out more about that prospect than his next door neighbor knows who's lived next to him for 10 years. Let's say, for instance, a prospect comes in and you've already had an effective reading. He's told you that he's there looking at fireplaces. You might say, Bob, is this the first time that you've been in our store? Oh, do you live close by? Oh, I see. Were you thinking of putting the fireplace in the existing room or in an addition? Oh, you're building a new house. Oh, where are you building it at? Oh, wow, that's a nice area. Boy, that's a beautiful area out there. What kind of house are you building? Oh, really? Wow, 3,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms. Well, I bet you that's going to look nice when it's done. Sure. Oh, big cathedral ceilings? Yeah, that should look nice. When are you going to start building the house? Oh, you already started. I see. Well, what stage do you think that you'll be ready for the fireplace part? Oh, 6 weeks. Okay. Well, let me ask you, Bob, with regard to your fireplace, what feature of a fireplace is really most important to you? Oh, really? You want people, oh, yeah, that's going to be a focal point, sure, when they come into that room. Oh, I know it's going to look beautiful now. Yeah, I understand, sure. See, what have you done? Within just a few moments, you found out you had a now buyer. He's got the money. He's building a new house. He's going to be ready for the product within 6 weeks. You found out the direction you're going to take in your product presentation because he's wanting to make a statement with that home, with that fireplace. That's his key reason for buying. He wants a statement. It's not wise now to go and take it and show him a $200 fireplace. You show him the best thing that you've got with a marble and mantle, and you build up his desire in that area after you found that out to qualify. Let's say now you have qualified your prospect. You know that you have a now buyer. You know the direction you're going to take in your product presentation. You have the customer's hot button in your hand. Now it's time to head for third base. Third base is the product presentation. Third base is where you make the sale. Third base is where you make the sale. From home is where you make the deal. Now there's a difference. It's real important. Third base, you make the sale. From home, you make the deal. A lot of salespeople make the mistake of trying to run from second right to home. What happens? They're out. Can't do that. It's almost impossible to make a deal unless you've sold the customer on your product, stimulated that desire and enthusiasm for the product. We see that it shows. A person will qualify him. They'll say, oh, okay, you're looking for something on the deck, or you're looking for something to fit into your fireplace. Well, here's one that will fit. Let's see what kind of deal we might be able to get you. It's almost impossible to sell that. You have to build desire. You have to build value into your product, enthusiasm. That's done in the product presentation. Now, during your product presentation, and because we're limited on time, we're not going to cover all of the different areas in product presentation that are important. But we wanted to touch at least on a few items. One that we see quite common is that salespeople talk too much about the features. This feature and that feature. They end up telling the customer too much about the details. They literally bore them to tears. Rather than being filled with desire and enthusiasm for that product, the customer is about half snoring. So rather than selling the features, sell them on the benefits. Rather than telling them how it works, show them what it will do for them. Paint the picture. Put them in the picture. Let them see themselves. Sell the dream. See, that's what selling the sizzle, not the steak means. For instance, let's say that Mrs. Jones has told you during qualifying that she's a beautician and she works out the local beauty parlor. And she stands on her feet all day long. And her feet are tired and sore every night. And that's the only reason she's even thinking about a spa. And I'll let you know that. So you've got the hot button. So, Mrs. Jones, follow me over here. Let me show you a feature here on this spa that people that stand on their feet all day long really appreciate. It's called a whirlpool jet. You see this device right here? This right here is the whirlpool jet. You see where it's located? It's at a particularly important place on the spa. It's right here at the foot of the lounger. And this is the lounger here. So you lay in this, Mrs. Jones, and your head goes on that nice soft pillow back there, and your feet come right up here in front of the whirlpool jet. Now watch what happens when I push this button. See that? Here, put your hand in there. That's all right. Go ahead. Put your hand in. Feel that, Mrs. Jones? Mrs. Jones, picture yourself working all day long at that beauty shop. And you're standing on your feet, and your feet are hurting. They're sore. And you know how bad they can hurt, don't you, Mrs. Jones? Oh, I know you do. Now, let's say you go home, and you get home, and you finally pry those shoes off. You can't hardly get them off because your feet are so swollen. You get into your robe, and you come out, and you take the cover off, and you slide into that lounger. You put your feet by the whirlpool jet, and you hit this button. Can you imagine the feeling? Just in a couple of minutes, every ache, pain is massaged away as those bubbles tickle through your toes. It's fabulous. You know, Mrs. Jones, many spas don't even have a whirlpool jet. And of the ones that do, very few located right here at the foot of the lounger. But I'm sure you can see why that's a very valuable feature for somebody that stands on their feet all day. Now, do you think that would work better than telling her about the size of the pump, how much electricity it uses, how many jets? See, what you've done, you've taken her key reason, her hot button, her motivating force, then you use that in your product presentation to stimulate desire and enthusiasm for your product. You painted the picture, you put her in the picture, you allowed herself to see her in that picture. You sold her the dream. That is when she gets excited. Now you wonder, at what point do I break for home? When do I go for the close? It's when you have desire and value built into the product at the highest level. And professional salespeople always know when the best time it is to go for the close. You can't go too early, you can't go too late. When you have that desire, you build value at a high level, it's time to go for the close. It could be just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. But when it's time, you got to go. And what happens to a lot of salespeople, they get to that point and people are excited. And it's like the guy he's standing on third base and he knows he needs to go home. But he just can't go. He's so afraid of going home, and he's standing there that finally he runs back to second. He's standing there, and the customer's standing and goes, did I tell you about this feature? And he goes, he starts telling some more features. And he gets back to third base. How about this one? I didn't tell you about that one. Pretty soon the customer says, wearing down and tired. And finally he says, well, you have a brochure, and the customer leaves. A long out. All the time with the customer, and it was a long out. See, that's the point where many salespeople choke. When on third base, they strand the runner at third. They never even allow themselves to play at the plate. It's important. You need to give yourself an opportunity to have a play at the plate. Sometimes you surprise yourself. You come in standing up. Isn't that was easy? Other times you got to slide in and you're barely safe. Sometimes you're going to be tagged out. But at least allow yourself a play at the plate. If you allow yourself a play at the plate, you're going to close more deals. But how do you do it? How do you actually close? How do you go about that now? What do you say when the customer says this or that? Now we're going to give our attention to Dean. Dean manages the sales of our retail organization. He's going to speak to us on closing, overcoming objections to house and to closing. The fourth phase, the final stage, the glamour part of the sale, the sales presentation. So let's give our attention now to Dina. Two-man operation here. Okay, my restaurant. Never done this before, at least it's tied around my neck. He was standing before me, all 245 pounds. Or was it 300? At that size, it didn't seem to matter. All I knew was that he was mad, fighting mad. And before I knew it, his fist was against my nose. My nose was punched to my face. My head snapped back. My eyes watered. But before I could react again, another hand was coming. But this time I ducked. And over top I came with a crunching right. And down he went. And he wasn't getting back up. I sat back in my chair. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I trembled. I shook. My arms were tight. My hands, I could barely move them. My breathing was rapid. All of a sudden, a hand was on my shoulder. I turned, I looked. It was my son. Good job, Dave! You finally beat King Hippo! Yeah! My turn! Give me the controller! What does playing a video game have to do with a sale, you're thinking? Have you ever seen anybody playing a video game that's good at it? Do you think he walked in there and put his first quarter in there and won? Not a chance in the world. One quarter after another goes in there. And he's done that night and he gets home and all he can think about is getting back there and putting some more quarters in that machine. And after days and weeks and months of putting countless amount of money into that machine, he finally becomes good, doesn't he? It's the same thing with closing a sale. What do you think? You're going to walk up to the first customer and close the sale? It's going to be easy? It's not. You got to put more quarters in the machine. You got to work harder. You watch somebody who's good at playing a video game, and what do you see? You see intensity. You see desire to win. I'll never forget playing Pac-Man with my brother Jeff. Has anybody ever played Pac-Man? You know, it only takes 2 fingers to move that thing, doesn't it? The thing just goes around. Just 2 fingers, that's all it takes. Jeffy's got his hand down there, and he's going like this. And the machine's rocking back and forth. By the time I get up there, my turn, I'd have to adjust the machine around straight. We'd walk back to the store, and his arm would be like this. You know, what do they call that? Pac-Man elbow? You've heard of that. That's intensity. That's desire. Do you have the same intensity and desire when that customer comes into your store? Do you want to close a deal? There's a lot of different challenges. In the game I described to you in the beginning, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, there's about 20 or 30 different guys before you get to Mike Tyson. The first one, he's pretty easy. You don't beat him at first. You try a little bit, you put a couple quarters in, pretty soon you're beating him. He's easy. The next guy comes, he's a little harder. The next guy a little harder. And finally, you get down there to the end, you got some hard guys. The same thing with selling. Do you know how to close the first guy that comes in, the laydowns? Everybody can do that. Have you tried to learn how to close on Mike Tyson, on the hard ones? That's the difference between winning and losing. You know, in order to be able to do that, you need to do 2 things. You need to do some research, and you need to open yourself up to suggestions. You know, to beat King Hippo, I talked to my neighbor next door, and I said, how do you beat him? I can't even hit him one time. He said, he's the easiest one. You just do this. Well, I didn't beat him the first time he told me, but I said, I think that technique might work. Show me how. And it worked. Talk to somebody else who's good at it, and they've got books this high. There's even videos that you watch The guys that are good at it spend a lot of time to do that. Do you do that in your sales career? I hope so. You know, they say that public speaking is the most feared thing that there is. In fact, in the United States, pollsters say that public speaking is rated as the most feared, even above death. You know, but I don't believe that that is the most fearful thing that there is to the average salesman. I think it's closing a sale. The reason I say that is that they say that 63% of all sales interviews end without any closes being attempted. Can you imagine that? Not even one. Why are they afraid of closing? Let's face it, there's a thing called rejection. I don't like to be rejected. Does anybody here like rejection? No, I don't think so. But I tell you, if you want to know what rejection is, it isn't somebody saying no. Rejection's when I go and I ask a young lady to dance. Excuse me, miss, would you care to dance? With you, midget? Go home and get your diapers changed. Oh, where's a rock? Where's something I can crawl under? Now that's rejection. You have to be able to overcome the people saying no. You've got to face it. You've got to face up to rejection. It's not easy to do, but you need to develop the skills. You need to get your skin a little thicker. Fortunately, when you're asking people to dance or out for a date, fortunately, hormones and desire comes into play, and you go back for another try. When you're closing deals, your checkbook or the money in your pocket ought to create the desire to get out there and do what's necessary to make the sale. You know, when you're closing, there's two key skills that's vitally important, and we've touched on them briefly here with my brother Jeff. One of them is voice inflection. Proper use of your voice. I don't know how many times I'll listen to a salesman, and he'll go all the way through his pitch and all the way through the close. Same monotonous voice. Da, 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 all the way through. When it comes down to the time for closing, you need to talk a little softer. Maybe raise your voice a little higher. You need to get a cassette recorder. You need to get that cassette recorder and put it into your pocket, your coat pocket. You need to listen to yourself giving a presentation. When you do that, you're going to see how you really sound. It's going to take some work, but believe me, when it comes to closing, using your voice is something that you need to develop. The second skill is asking questions, and lots of them. Jeff talked about asking questions throughout. Did you like this feature? Where are you going to put it? When it comes down to closing, you ask even more questions. These things get your customer involved. It lets you know where you're at so that you know when to run for home. We're going to be moving fast. I had about 2 hours of material, and somehow I'm going to try to cover it in about 45 minutes to an hour. As we're moving here, I'm going to assume, for the sake of assuming, that you've touched all the bases. You've outlined what the customer's needs were. You've created value in the product. You've established urgency, and you've narrowed it down, whether it be narrowed down their objection or you narrowed it down to a specific product. That's what we're going to assume as we go forward. You've done everything right. You're down to the close. But before you get there, the customer says the words everybody loves to hear when you're salesman. I never make a decision without my spouse. Doesn't that just get you excited? Or how about, I've got to go home and measure. Oh, good. This is the first place I shop. Yippee, you say to yourself. All right. We've got to go home and talk this over. Ooh, good. Oh, the next one's my favorite. The price is too high. Doesn't it just send shivers up and down your spine to hear those things? It doesn't? Well, how not getting excited that they're asking you the theory of relativity, what's included there. That's something you've never had to deal with before. That is a tough one. But these 5 I've got listed here, and then are on the sheets that you have there, are 5 of the most common objections that each and every one of us face in our business. Are they not? You know, we asked many of you, what objections would you want to get covered? And these were them. You should have an answer when someone comes up with that. You should be excited. You know how to overcome these objections. The first one I want to talk about, and again we're going to be moving quick, is the price is too high. First of all, you need to determine that that really is the objection. You know, many times it isn't the price at all. It's the fact that it wasn't black. He wanted a brown wood stove. You do that by asking, if there were a way that I could show you that the price was more than fair and worth every dime, would you move ahead with a yes decision today? Now, if he says no, then he can elaborate on something else that might be holding back. Determine whether the objection is real. That's your first thing that you do. The next thing you might want to do, besides price, is there any other reason why you might hesitate today? Narrow the objections down. No sense covering price, overcoming that, and then all of a sudden he wants to know, did the grate come with it, or did this and this and this and that, and how come this, and those chemicals have to be added, and tell me all about that. At that point, those things should have been covered. Eliminate them. The price is too high. Compared to what? Well, I can't see spending $150 for this brass door when the black door over here would do me just fine. Or, it's too high compared to Joe's wood stove down here. He's got something for the same thing for a lot less money. Find out what the objection really is. A lot of times when we say the price is too high compared to what, they don't have any explanation. You know, customers feel, and Jeff touched on this, they feel they need to get a deal. They feel obligated to ask for a better deal, don't they? The price is too high. Well, Mr. Prospect, how much too high is the price? Find out if you're in the same ballpark. If you're showing a $1,000 wood stove and he says you're $500 too high, you either need to end the sales interview at that point or go back to creating more value in the product. But typically, let's again assume that you've done the job right. When we've done it right, I found that the majority of the times on a $1,000 item, or even a $4,000 or $5,000 item, many times I'm only $50 or $100 off. Now, again, some customers need to get a deal or they're not going to go ahead, and you stand a lot better chance if you have a negotiating room there in that price. But again, he might like it just where it's at. He might have already said in his mind, this is a good value, I'll just ask. Don't drop the price if you don't have to. Now, when you say, when he says to you, the price is too high, and you're moving forward and saying, compared to what? Then, or how much too high, excuse me, you say, how much too high is it? He says $50, say he says $5. It doesn't matter what he says, and inside you know that you can do it, don't just jump on it. What you want to do is you want to say, Mr. Prospect, we're talking about the wrong stove. We should be looking at this stove over here. Now you show him the stove that you know he doesn't want. It doesn't have the brass door he said he wanted, it doesn't have the glass, it doesn't have the blower, and all the things he said he wanted. Now if you've done a good job, this is what happens. They say, oh no, I don't want that one, I want this one. Now is when some good one-liners will come in handy. I had about 30 of them, and I think I'm down to about 6 or 7 because of time. But here's how some of them might go. Mr. Prospect, wouldn't you agree that it's difficult to pay too much for something that you really like? Now, if price really is an objection, oftentimes they'll move ahead right then. But if he doesn't move ahead, then you can say, let me point out that you're going to be concerned about price only you buy. But you're going to be concerned about quality for the entire lifetime of the product. Wouldn't you agree that it's better to invest just a little more than you planned than to spend less than you should? You know, Mr. Prospect, the common law of business balance prohibits building a quality product, such as the one we have here, and selling it for cheap. It just can't be done. Really, Mr. Prospect, why settle for the get by when in the long run, the good costs less? The price is still too high. You might say, you do want something that you can depend on for the long haul, don't you, Mr. Prospect? You know, Mr. Prospect, many years ago, our company had to make a basic business decision. We decided then that it would be easier to explain price one time than to apologize for poor quality forever. Mr. Prospect, you've got to be glad that we made that decision, aren't you? And that would look nice in your home, wouldn't it? We can have it delivered tomorrow or Friday, which will be better for you. Alternative choice. There's many more one-liners. You need to learn these one-liners. You need to do some research. And you need to develop a repertoire of one-liners. Sometimes one of them will do the job. Sometimes you'll use 10 or 20 in a sale to get a deal. There's many more ways to handle price objections. A couple of my favorites that I won't have time to touch on today because of the time constraints are the price-cost close. And I'm going to encourage you to look this one up. Customer says price is too high, you say, I'm confused. Is it the price or is it the cost you're concerned with? And there is a difference. I know some of you know that. If you don't, look it up. Another good one is reduced to ridiculous. That's another excellent one. In fact, I was just out at a sales seminar out in California this past week, and somebody had an excellent one that I want to share with you real briefly on the reduced to ridiculous. He was taking a $4,000 spa. The customer was saying, well, they didn't know they could afford it. And he said, Mr. Prospect, let me ask you a question. Can you afford to eat at McDonald's every day? Obviously, that's the cheapest place in the world to eat, isn't it? Of course, most people can't afford to eat at McDonald's every day. Did you know, Mr. Prospect, that a hamburger, a fry, and a Coke will cost you $3.24? And did you know that for $2.60 a day, you can own this beautiful spa? That's reducing to the ridiculous. An excellent procedure to cover the price objections. We're going to have to move forward. We're going to move into another objection. This objection is, I have to talk to my spouse. First of all, you want to ask yourself, do they really have to talk to their spouse? I'm here to tell you that in most cases they don't. Anything under $500 or $1,000, most people don't have to go. What, be for real? Do you want to go on your day off if your wife's been out shopping and spend all day long Saturday looking around for something for $400 or $500? No. And chances are they've already talked about it. They've already made a decision that they wanted to purchase that product, or else they wouldn't be there in the first place. Now, would they? I'll never forget the time I went in to buy a TV. The salesman got to the close, alternative choice. He said, Mr. Berry, as you can plainly see, this TV comes in oak, and it comes in black. Which do you think you prefer? I said, well, to be honest with you, I let my wife make that decision. Well, Mr. Berry, here's my card. Ask for me when you come back with her. Was that an objection? It wasn't even an objection. I was just going to let her pick up out the color. Let's write the order up, take my money, and I'll go home and ask her if I have to. She can call you back on the phone. Here's a way. I had several good ways here on how to deal with that. I'm going to go over one that my brother Daryl tells, and I'm going to really shorten it up again because of time. He says, Mrs. Prospect, let me ask you something. Let's assume that you're looking for an automobile, you and your husband. Now, are you both going to be involved in that decision? Of course, they answer affirmative, or she will answer affirmative. Let's say that you decide on a brand new Regency Oldsmobile, top of the line. You know, your husband, he's doing the shopping because you're too busy. He goes up to the Oldsmobile dealership, and as he's going through there, he notices a brand new Cadillac sitting there. He asks the salesman, "Oh, what's a Cadillac doing here at the Oldsmobile dealership?" And he says, "You're not going to believe it. GM, a big company, you know how they build both of these up at the Buick plant, or up at the plant up in Pontiac area there. They sent me the wrong vehicle. And you know how they are. There's too much paperwork and all of that, so we're just going to keep it here. We're going to sell it. The owner wants to hurry up and get rid of it." And he said that if anybody was even remotely interested, that he'd sell them this for $2,000 less than you'd have to pay for an Oldsmobile. Now, Mrs. Prospect, all along, you and your husband have had your sights set on that Cadillac, but it was just a little too high. Now, all of a sudden, it's coming into reality. Now, let me ask you a question. If your husband went without putting anything down on it, and he came home and he got you, and the tuning went back and it was gone, wouldn't you be just a little bit upset that he didn't put a couple $100 down on it to at least give you the opportunity to say yes or to say no? And Mrs. Prospect, that's all we're asking you to do. Works like a charm. I've got to go home and measure. This is probably the toughest one to deal with. You don't know what these measurements are. There's an intangible here that you have no control over. But here's something that we found to work pretty good. Got to go home and measure. Well, that's great. Obviously, you wouldn't waste your time going home and measure if you didn't like the product. Now would you? So I've got to assume that if it fit, you'd move ahead, wouldn't you? Then you proceed to give them a condition, and if it doesn't fit, if it is money back, might as well move ahead now. This works real well for overcoming that objection. Next objection is, this is the first place we've looked. And Jeff touched on it. The hardest place in the world to overcome an objection like that is when you're at a show. You know what we do when we're at a show? We've got a big sign that we use that comes in handy. The sign says on it, we guarantee that we've got the best prices. And if we can't beat any deal, we'll gladly pay you $1,000 cash. And it's spelled out there in numerals and letters. And I say it 2 times. $1,000 cash, $1,000 cash. Now I say to the customer, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, really, what you're saying to me isn't that you're wanting to shop around. Nobody really wants to do that. What you're really saying is that you're looking for the best deal going, aren't you? And they always say, well, really, that's it. And then you say, and you've already pointed to this sign, and you say, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I'm going to give you the best tip that you're ever going to get. Hear me out all the way through. I'm going to walk over here to the sales counter, and you're going to come with me. We're going to sit down, and I'm going to write you up. And you're going to give me $500. You know what I'm going to give you? I'm going to give you an invoice. And you know what I want you to do with that invoice? I want you to go right over there, that booth over there, and I want you to go to that one over there, and to that one, and I want you to go to every booth here. And if you want, you can go to every spot place between here and Mississippi. Now what you do is this. You walk in and you say, we're the Joneses. We're serious about having a spot. In fact, we've got $500 down on one over here at Fireplace and Spa. Now let me tell you something, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. If someone came into my booth and said that, I would do everything that I possibly could, including standing on my head if I had to get the deal. We closed 40 or 50 extra sales with that close. I never had to give back $1,000 either. In fact, only 2 people ever came back to even do a comparison. A splendid procedure. We use it every day in our stores. We need to go and talk this over. We've got to sleep on it. What do you do? You smile. And you say, that's great. I'm glad you want to think about it. Obviously, you wouldn't waste your time thinking about it if you weren't sincerely interested, now would you? If I'm reading you right, and I think that I am, your prime objective is to be certain as possible to make the right decision, whether it takes 2 minutes or 2 days. With that in mind, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I want to point out something that my dad told me a long time ago. He said, son, the best time to make a decision is when all the facts are before you and fresh in your mind. You know what's going to happen is, Mrs. Jones, you're going to go home and you're going to say here to Mr. Jones, honey, did that come with the cover? And he's going to look back at you and say, well, honey, I can't remember. It's pretty hard to make a good decision then, isn't it? Here's my suggestion. Come on over here, have a seat right here. Sit down and think about it right here. I'm going to go in my office and give you some privacy, and in a few minutes I'm going to come back and answer that question for you about that cover. If I can get him sitting down in that seat, we'll get a sale every time. We're moving on to the closing menu. You know, there's hundreds of good closings. And as I was doing some research for this material here tonight, I was looking over clothes that I've already forgot about. Some excellent ones. In fact, I included one of them in here that I've totally forgotten about and want to share that with you tonight. The first one we're going to talk about is the assumptive close. We used to use this close in this manner. Now, first of all, let me tell you what assumptive close is. When someone comes in your door, you think, well, here comes somebody, I'll talk to them, and they're going to come back. No. You assume from the minute they come in the door that when they go, they're going to be an owner of your product. And you assume that right through the sale. When we were selling ceiling fans, we would give them the product presentation, and then I'd say something like this. If you were going to get this, and I put heavy emphasis on if you were going to get this ceiling fan, would you want it in the antique brass or the polished brass? Now, would you want it with 5 blades or 4 blades? In getting this, would it be with or without the lights? And will that be cash, check, or charge? You move right from the product presentation right into a close. It works excellent, particularly on the small merchandise and merchandise of not too much value. That's an easy one. It works extremely well, and they'll walk right over and be written up, and you'll close deals faster than you ever have before. The 3-question close. Can you see where this would save you money? Now, Mr. Prospect, are you interested in saving money? If you were ever going to start saving money, when do you think the best time to start would be? Now, you know, you might have to take and adapt that. Let's say you sell a product that's not saving money, but is offering enjoyment, like a spa. Mr. Prospect, can you see where this would give you extra enjoyment? Are you interested in enjoying life a little more? Now, if you were ever going to start enjoying life and living it to its fullest, when do you think the best time to start would be? That works tremendously well. The 4-question close. You know, Mr. Prospect, at this point, there's only 4 questions that you need to answer. And you know something remarkable? You've already answered 3 of them. Do you like it? You've already said, of course you do. Do you want it? Why, you wouldn't be here if you didn't want it. Can you afford it? You've already said that you pay cash. You know, Mr. Prospect, that only leaves 1 question. I heard somebody answer. When do I want to start enjoying the benefits of the product? Now, if he doesn't answer quick, you say, Mr. Prospect, obviously, you're the only one that can answer that. Now, if you think he's going to hesitate and not give you the right answer, say, since benefit and enjoyment can only begin with ownership, doesn't it make sense to vote yes now? He's still hesitating, pausing. Here's a powerful statement. You know, Mr. Prospect, it's just as inexpensive to have it all in your life as it is to own it only part of your life. With that thought in mind, don't you think you ought to start enjoying the benefits How many times do you go out and you're talking to somebody, and you get all the way through the presentation, and all of a sudden he comes up with, well, they've got exactly the same thing down the road, and it's $500 less. Now, you know down in Joe's Wood Stove, all he's doing is selling a glorified barrel stove kit. It doesn't have a brass door on it. Well, in fact, it doesn't have a door on it. It doesn't have a blower. It doesn't have any of the things that you want. There's not even remotely close to your product. What do? You idiot! Are you blind as a bat? Haven't you listened to a word I've said? Not hardly. You look at him and you agree. You say, you know something? I agree. There are a lot of similarities between this beautiful stove here, Crescent, that you're talking about, and the stove down at Joe's. But you know something, Mr. Prospect? Let me point out that there are a lot of similarities between an original Rembrandt and reproduction, aren't there? But you know something amazing is that when you go to sell them, the differences are going to become quite apparent, now aren't they? Over here, Mr. Prospect, we have an original Rembrandt. Let me show you what the differences are. A superb procedure. Sure, let's get going here. I was done. The tie-down close. If you've been listening carefully, you know what a tie-down close is. You've noticed you use a lot of them, haven't you? A tie-down is when you make a statement and turn it into a question. You get the customer saying yes enough times to minor points, and the big yes at the end is a whole lot easier. You do it like this. That's nice, isn't it? That was fun, wasn't it? I did it again, didn't I? Learn to use tie-downs. Practice it when you're talking to your wife, when you're driving in the car. You'll become a lot more effective on your closes. The hat and the hand close. You ever had that situation where you've done everything? You've even stood on your head. You've told them every single close that you know. You've done probably twice as much as what I've talked about so far tonight. And you don't get the deal. And the customer's getting ready to go. You know, so many times I go out the door, and you think about it, oh, but I've only done this. Or a lot of times I'll listen to my tape recorder, and oh, I'm blind as a bat. Here I was trying to sell him this, when he just wanted this wood stove over here. What the hat and the hand close does is it gives you an opportunity to have one last shot at him. And that's really all we want, isn't it? This hat is in his hand. He's walking out the door. You say, excuse me, obviously you're not buying today. And that's okay. I certainly don't sell everybody. You know, I had hoped that I'd be able to explain our product so that you would see the benefits and want to move ahead, and I feel bad that I wasn't able to do that. You know, I'm almost embarrassed to ask this, but it would really help my sales career a lot. If you could point out to me where I went wrong and where I dropped the ball as a salesperson. What are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, no, you didn't do anything wrong. You did a tremendous job. It's just that. He gives you one last shot. He tells you the real reason that he hesitated. Try it. You'll like it. The My Mother clothes. You know, you've heard a lot up here tonight, and I know, or today I should say, I know a lot of you are saying, oh, I would never use that. That can't work for me. Well, I know how you feel. Because at one time I felt the same way. Until I found out that these clothes will work. The My Mother clothes is one that, when I heard it, I said, oh, that will never work. Fortunately, Jim Crumpleman was with me when we heard it, and the very next day, he used it. You've got one of those customers that doesn't respond when you ask a closing question. I think our closing question was like that with the glass door with the screen. They don't respond. In fact, Jim told me that this customer never said anything to him the whole time. One of the customers that stands and looks at the floor, when you ask him something, he goes, oh, because you want to, oh. You don't really know where you're at. If you've got one of those customers, you ask the closing question. The old school of thought was, the first one who talk loses. Now, of course, today, we all know that that's not necessarily true. So Jim knew as he's watching the customer, Jim said, Mr. Prospect, would you like it with the glass door or with the screen? There was a long silence. And Jim knew that before that red got up back of his neck and touched his ears, he better say something. Mr. Prospect, my mother told me that silence is consent. Do you think my mother was telling me the truth? Now, I kid you not. I kid you not. Jim said that customer looked up, for the first time said something to him. There's 3 words. Write me up. Don't be afraid to try something. You know, the next one I want to talk about is the pressure permission close. You know, when you feel like I do, and you're excited about the products that you're selling, and you know that you've got tremendous service, and that if the customer doesn't buy from you, that he's the loser, when you feel like that, sometimes it's easy to get carried away. Now, let me caution you, as you're selling and you become better, you learn how to make that pressure feel better. But sometimes you do get carried away and it slips away from you, and you get a little too much pressure on somebody. Now, if you're reading them and you're looking them in the eye and you're watching their body language, sometimes you can tell. And you can back up and say something. I'm going to move forward, though, because you're going to do the same thing in this situation, too. You're pouring it on, and you're getting a little hard on it. And all of a sudden, the customer says, wait a minute, this is too much pressure. I can't take this. Take a step back. Now, I'm a small guy. I don't look too imposing, but if you're big, you might want to take 2 or 3 steps back. But back up a little bit, give them some room, and say, Mr. Prospect, I am sorry. Not only am I sorry, I am so embarrassed. You don't know how many times I tell my salesman, I don't ever want to see you using high-pressure tactics. And here you are accusing me of doing that. I'm really sorry. Will you forgive me? And usually by then they'll say, oh, young man, that's not so bad. Don't worry. And then you say, Mr. Prospect, can I ask you a question? They'll say, yeah. You say, if I knew something that was going to save you a lot of time and a tremendous amount of money, would you want me to tell you about it? Well, that's exactly what I was trying to do. And you got mad at me. Now I'm going to try again, and you promise not to get mad at me. Now, I don't say it that way every time. Probably about 50% of the time, though, I can read the customer and see that I can say that. And they'll usually laugh and say, go ahead, we can stand the heat, we'll take our jackets off. They're giving you permission to close them. When they do that, you know you've got a deal. It works superbly. Don't be afraid to try it. We use it all the time. They say to save the best for last. I think they were talking about my wife's desserts when they said that, but I'm going to present particularly a show, that's when you get to see it working like crazy. But I'll guarantee you something, if you take a valuable Saturday or a valuable Sunday, it will be the best money, the best time that you've ever spent to learn how to do it. When I first seen the technique, I flew out to California on those valuable Saturdays and Sundays 4 or 5 times working with a pro that knew how to do it, to learn it. Believe me, take the time, it will be worth your while. You know, we've talked about a lot of points tonight, but that's all we've done is talked. And you know something? The talk doesn't mean anything. All we've done is we've talked about qualification. We've talked about how to give good product presentation. We've talked about how to create desires within the customer. We've talked about painting word pictures. We've talked about selling them on that dream and creating urgency. We've talked about avoiding the pitfalls of feedbackitis. We've talked about the importance of selling them on the first time in. We've talked about the difference between hitting a long out, a triple, and a home run. We've talked about how to make pressure feel so good. We've even talked about how to close a sale. But again, those things don't mean anything to you without this final close. I want everybody to sit up a little straighter, pay a little closer attention, put your thinking cap on, get your pen in your hand, and write this close down. This is the most important close you're ever going to hear. I call it the myself close. You know, it wasn't too long ago, as Jeff alluded to, we had a problem in one of our stores. Sales were down. Why were they down? I would ask this when I would call. Well, there were no customers. And of course, you know, Dean, the weather's been kind of bad lately. And you know, Dean, the customers who did come in, they weren't buyers. And if they were buyers, they couldn't afford it. And if they could afford it, they weren't going to be building because the year 2001. And of course, Dean, the economy, you know, it's down a little bit. That's affecting things. And Dean, that advertising you've been doing is not working real well. And you know, we've got a new competitor right down the street. And Dean, you got to admit, this isn't the best location. Oh, I spent all that money opening that store up. Poor me. I've been able to work at McDonald's now. See what I said? I knew I had a place that could perform. I knew all the tools were there. All I needed to do was change one thing. Guess what? We put a new sales crew over there. Now let me point out that the salesman that I took out of there was a tremendous salesman. In fact, this salesman holds our company record of 18 spa sales in one day. He's a tremendous salesman. But he just quit believing in himself. Put a new crew over there. Sales went up. Jeff already gave away my punchline. They didn't go up 50%. In fact, no, Jeff, they didn't go up 200%. They went up 300%. This is the close. You are the only reason why business is either good or it's bad. Accept it. You know, it's easy to take credit when things are going good, isn't it? We all like to say, yeah, it's going pretty good. I'm a pretty good salesman and a smart cookie, ain't I? But when it's bad, human nature wants you to roll it over to something else. It's all these other reasons. That's why business ain't good. If you're ever going to become a top salesman, you need to close yourself on the myself close. That you and you alone are the only reason why business is either good or bad. What do you do when life hands you a lemon? You make lemonade, that's right. If you put these principles to work that we've talked about here today, if you study them, if you instill it in yourself, if you pull it in right here into your heart,
As an expression of our genuine appreciation, J&D Distributing wishes to present this videotape as a gift to you, our valued customers who have participated in our 1990 Dealer Show and Symposium. It is our hope that the suggestions presented will be a benefit to you and that you truly will sell your way to the top.